Hello and welcome to another True Crime and Wine Couple video. Today we will be talking about the violence and violent acts committed by Generation Z and Alpha. But first, the wine.
Yes, the wine. This is a dry Riesling from Montezuma Winery up in the Finger Lakes, one of Mary's favorite wineries. So we will be discussing this at the end of the video, but grab your wine and join along.
Is this a Riesling?
This is the dry Riesling, yes. Okay, so we thought what we'd start tackling today is what seems to be a huge uptick in violence committed by juveniles, specifically the Gen Z generation, the Gen Alpha. You know a little bit better than I do what the age groups are of those.
That was not part of your research, I take it?
It was, but I forget what it was.
Okay.
I remember what it was, but I forget.
Give me
I
a minute
remember
to
seeing
do
it, but I
some
forgot.
sleuthing.
But what we thought we'd do is we want to see if we could sort of tie together the written. I don't think we're ever going to find out we're not going to find out the reason why, but we just wanted to highlight that this seems to be an ongoing issue. There seems to be a huge uptick in these serious violent crimes by these juveniles. Not only, and specifically a lot of them in the schools, which seems to be affecting, obviously, and Mary can talk to this firsthand, the teachers not feeling safe in the schools, not having control of the students, not having control of anything to where they can actually get some actual schoolwork done. And it's been reflected in the grades and the fact that a lot of these Gen Z people just can't read. They're not able to concentrate in school. There's just so much violence.
Alpha more so than Gen Z. So Gen Z is going to be the adult members born, or children born from 1997 to 2013.
So then there will be the 10 years to 20.
And Gen Alpha
26.
is 2010 to 2024. So there's a little bit of, there's an overlap, right?
There's a few year overlap there.
There's a, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's going to hit it right in that sweet spot of the teen years for a lot of these.
One more interesting thing about Gen Alpha, they are expected to be the largest generation in history with more than 2 billion people in that generation. That, of course, is, worldwide.
Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like a really
So they
good
bred a
idea.
lot of them.
Yes, that sounds like a really good idea. So what we wanted to do was just sort of highlight some of these cases that are out there of these juveniles that are committing these crimes and the seriousness of them. They're just so violent. And go ahead.
As much as the violence, I also think it's with the callous nature of what they do and the lack of empathy. He'll talk about some crimes that I've brought them up to him because I've seen like stories about them, and of course he's done his own research too. But yeah, I'm just shocked at how callous they are and how the acts of violence seem to be getting more and more senseless. That's what I believe is concerning among Gen Z and Alpha. With the crimes that are in, the crimes in the headlines within the past year or whatever,
Right.
So that's what I see. Like they're very callous, and there's just no remorse whatsoever.
No, and I'm gonna a little bit later on in the video, I'm going to be quoting this gentleman who was a former NYPD Bronx Cold Case Squad commander, and what he had said was that, like Mary said, they have no remorse, but it's also because they just expect it. This is just sort of what they expect their lives to be. So they expect to commit these crimes, they expect to get arrested, and they expect to spend time in jail. And it's almost like a badge of honor as opposed to where it is being looked down upon within the community, where they just don't care because they really expect that to be the outcome of their lives anyway.
Well, in addition to the expectations, I think another problem is, and especially with the incident in Las Vegas that Pete's going to talk about, is they expect to get slaps on the wrist. They don't expect the justice system to throw the book at them. because in schools we are doing less and less and less discipline. Restorative justice is a thing now. There's a lot of questioning about how millennials are parenting these kids in these generations, as opposed to how our generation parented their children. Yeah, but there's like I said, they're not used to consequences because they're not being enforced at home. Now, we're not saying every parent. Obviously, there's always exceptions to the rules, and I will also talk about, I work with some wonderful kids. I mean, at my school, 99% of our kids are wonderful. So there's that too. I'll talk about that side as well, but it's the lack of discipline. And it's
From
across
top
the
to bottom.
board, right? And here's the thing. Parents aren't disciplining their children, but society is going to discipline them, and they're going to be tried as adults if they commit these really heinous crimes. So you're not disciplining your children, so society is going to. And your kid who's had a slap on the wrist in school, or because they got in trouble for assaulting another student in school, they're sent back to to class with Skittles and chips, and they get to hang out with the principal. That's not what's going to happen in the justice system when they're tried as adults and locked, put on lockdown for 24 hours a day in a maximum security prison facility.
And the more heinous the crime and the more violent the crime, these kids are now being tried as adults. So they're getting a harsh dose of reality right away.
Before their brains have even developed to the point where they understand reality, and that's another problem here. These kids, their brains are not developed, and they're not being raised to learn that your actions have consequences.
Right, exactly. So, and I just pulled some random cases from across the country just to sort of highlight, and we know about most of these. I did pull, I think I got one or two where I was not aware of it. But actually what sort of got us on this subject was Mary had seen an article or a YouTube video or something within the past week about this high school up in Massachusetts. It's Brockton High School, and 4 school board members have requested that the governor send in the National Guard to restore order in their high school. That's how bad that high school has gotten. Now, like I said, it was just 4 school members that made the request. The mayor of that town does not agree with it. He doesn't think that's an appropriate solution to have the National Guard come in. However, it was passed up to the governor because only the governor can make a decision to send in the National Guard anywhere. So it's on her desk now. She hasn't made any statements about it or anything as of yet.
What I'd like to say too is a very disturbing video from that school emerged, and it was scary to watch. If you want to go see it, it's everywhere. There was basically a beatdown with more than 20 students right in the stairwell on top of a flight of stairs. And then I was reading comments by teachers who actually work there, and they were very disturbing, or just to see these teachers pleading at this board meeting, like, do something here, discipline these children. One person who was a teacher reported that they were pushed down the steps by a student and are now permanently disabled for life. And when I read the comments under some of these videos, if you like to read comments and look at that sort of thing, there's a lot of there's students from the school speaking out. There's teachers that taught there speaking out, and it's very upsetting and disturbing that especially as a parent, if you're sending your child to a school like that, if you're somebody who is a loved one of a teacher. You're sending your mom, your dad, your family member, your friend who's a teacher into that environment every day, and it's very disturbing.
And it makes it impossible to learn. It makes it impossible to teach. And they did an interview with the superintendent of the school, and what he said was that they have apparently that this school is almost $20 million in debt. They had to lay off a bunch of people last year, so they're very short-staffed, and apparently they just don't have enough staff in the school to keep control of the kids. Kids are just wandering all over the place because they don't have the staff to control them.
Well, another problem too that was the amount of teachers calling in sick. I guess the teachers are basically mentally and physically sick because of the environment of the school. So you also have, I guess the one day they had, the day that beatdown occurred that I saw, there were like 35 teachers out that day. And if you know about, the situation for schools today, if you don't, lucky you. If you have to know or are in the know, there's no substitute teachers available. Well, there's no teachers available, so there's a shortage of substitutes as well. So when all those teachers are out, kids are probably sitting in study halls. So instead of 30, 40 kids in a classroom, you've got 100 kids in a study hall being monitored by one person or whoever's available. So that's just a recipe for disaster when you're taking all those kids and putting them in a very large room together.
And it's almost like a domino effect, because from what you've told me is that now that there's such a teacher shortage, they have to get bodies in there to teach these kids. So now they're hiring people that aren't even teachers.
Right.
So now these people are coming in, they don't have the training, they don't have the education that a regular teacher does. They have knowledge in that subject from being out in the real world, but they don't have a teaching degree. So that makes it harder to manage as well, I would imagine.
And with people who do have degrees, for younger teachers, they talk about how college has just, in the universities, they've had to just lower their requirements, and they've had to, I hate to use this term, but dumb it down because of what's going on with these generations. So, so the people that are coming out of school are very ill prepared for this, you know what I mean? And they don't have the people that are becoming teachers, because kids are growing up today seeing what goes on and seeing what teachers put up with and seeing how teachers are vilified in society, and we don't have people becoming teachers.
No, and why would you want to be a teacher now? With all this stuff going on.
I would not be encouraging. Well, I actually at my school, believe it or not, I'm the co-advisor for the Future Educators of America Club, and we really try to tell the students, we tell them the reality of what they're going to face.
Right. So that's what got us sort of started down this subject. So I thought what I'd try to do is just pull some of the bigger headlines. I could sit here for the next 12 hours and go. It's just amazing. You just go to Google and you search these things. There's just case after case after case after case. But so I wanted to just sort of try to tie it into the school, because Mary's a teacher. This Brockton High School was the one that sort of got us onto the subject. So I thought I'd just sort of try to keep it in the school realm.
And I've been following some of these crimes for a while because I am a teacher and I am interested in violence by youth. I also worked in a juvenile detention facility when I first started out teaching early. Oh, I'm not going to date myself, but a long time ago, over 3 decades ago. So I have seen the escalation in the types of students and the school violence and things like that. So I follow these cases.
So the first one is, and the reason I'm making this the first one, because we just sort of had his mom going, get sent, or she hasn't been sentenced yet, but she was just found guilty, last week or the week before. And
Sure, Mom.
Within the past couple weeks. And then his father's going to be going on trial next month, right?
Okay.
March. So Ethan Crumbley. Ethan Crumbley.
Oh yes. Oh, Crumbley. I thought you were going to talk about the 6-year-old.
No, but I'm talking about Ethan Crumbley.
Dad. James Crumbley's jury selection starts for him March 5th. And he's currently trying to get some stuff thrown out, and I'm going to do
a change of venue, right?
Change of venue, yeah. And we're doing a recap of popular crimes this week, so we'll talk more about that later this weekend.
But Ethan Crumbley, we all know what he did, and by all accounts, it seemed like this kid was really reaching out for help, and he just wasn't getting it. His parents had thought the best solution: let's go buy him a gun, and then we all know what happened. So. This is a case where I think his parents failed him, the school failed him.
Absolutely.
He was failed at and he was kind of crying out.
Well, let's not just say him. The school failed him and those 4 students that were killed, and the teacher and others that were injured. The school failed all of those. The school failed all of their students and their staff, in my opinion. In Ethan Crumbley's case.
Yeah, in that case, the ball was dropped all the way around. It was easily preventable, and it's just a sad story.
What was frustrating to me about that case is what was going on in the school seemed like a lot of passing the buck. Oh, so the teacher reported the drawing, as the teacher should. As a teacher, you can't deal with this stuff yourself. You have to report it to somebody. So the teacher reported these drawings to the dean of students, who went and passed it off to the guidance counselor. And then they had a meeting with the parents, and they tried to pass it off to the parents. And the parents would not take him out that day. A real problem I have with the school, and I said this in our Jennifer Crumbly video, I'll just touch on it real quick if you want to go and watch that. That is in our catalog. So basically they told the parents, if you don't get him mental health assistance within the next 48 hours, we are going to report you to CPS. Okay, schools are mandated reporters. If you're reporting to CPS, you call it that minute. You don't give a parent 48 hours to do this, all right? So if that was a CPS, if they thought that should have been reported to Child Protective Services, I say CPS, sorry, we use all the buzzwords in education, you do that now. You don't wait on that. So that, I have a real problem with the school doing that. Another problem I have is, the counselor said, yeah, sorry, this is like a big one for me, and I just cut Pete off. He's got his little research there, he's ready to go. Another problem was, they claimed that the student had suicidal ideation. So they thought that the school said they thought Ethan was more of a danger to himself than others. Okay, well if you think a kid is going to harm themselves, you don't leave that child alone. Never mind, hand them their backpack and send them back to class. Okay, like I said, I've been a teacher for over 3 decades, and I've worked with troubled youth as much as regular, neurotypical youth. I'm a special education teacher. I also teach neurotypical kids as well. You don't leave that kid alone. I mean, I knew that when I was starting out teaching at 23 years old, and we had kids that were, you don't send that kid back to class. I'm sorry, and I know schools aren't usually held liable, but in this case, they really should be. They just made egregious mistake, and it seemed like the teachers, and we'll talk about the case of Abigail Werner as well, the teachers were like begging them to do something, and it was just pass the buck. And that is what you will see in schools. They will pass the buck. The teacher will pass it on to the counselor will pass it on to the administrator will pass it on to the head administrator. And this is what happens, and they don't take care of the problem. And this is a problem in America today, because everybody passes the buck. Nobody wants to do the work required to solve problems, and we're not solving problems with these kids. We're giving them Skittles, we're giving them a pat on the back, we're pandering to the parents who don't want their kid disciplined, and we're creating a recipe for disaster.
And one of the reasons I brought this one up, and the next one I'm going to get into, is because in this case, and I think it's a good thing, it was sort of groundbreaking in the sense that the mother has already been held accountable. The father will find out if he's going to be held accountable.
He's going to be next.
So I think he will. Yeah. So at least I think that's positive. I know there's a lot of debate about that, but I think these parents need to be held accountable, and I think the school should have been held accountable in this case as well. So the next one I'm going to get into is the teacher that was shot by a 6-year-old, Newport News, Virginia. This was a little over a year ago. Kid just took the mother's gun, brought it to school, thought it was the coolest thing in the world, and shot the teacher.
And once again, the school passed the buck, and the school screwed up, and Abigail paid the price. And that's what's happening. Teachers are paying the price for people not disciplining their children, for administrators not doing their job in schools, and for people passing the buck, as they tried to in the case of Abigail Werner. She was begging for help for this kid. Another thing that's a problem is that the child had an individualized education program that needs to be followed, and it said that a parent was to accompany him to school. Guess what? No parent accompanied him to school. Why do you think Abigail Werner is suing the school for millions and millions of dollars, as she should? Those IEPs need to be followed. If those parents did not go with that child, which that is an insane thing to put in an IEP. I put that in an IEP once in 30 years of teaching, and that was for a student that wound up being in prison for attempted murder, okay? So that's the kind of student we're talking about. Now that kid was obviously a sophomore in high school versus a 6-year-old.
So
But-
just imagine how troubled this kid was at 6 years old that they had to put that in IEP.
Like I said, the only case I've seen of it was a student who basically, well, he's still incarcerated for attempted murder.
So yeah, so it wasn't like this kid was like, oh my God, I can't believe Johnny did that. No, they knew the kid's history, and they had a plan laid out. They didn't follow it, and then disaster strikes. But again, in this case, now it wasn't to the degree of the Crumblies, but the mother was held accountable. She was sentenced to 21 months in federal prison. She pled guilty to 2 federal charges, and they really had nothing to do with the shooting itself. The first charge was an unlawful use of a controlled substance while possessing a firearm, and then the second charge she pled guilty to was making a false statement while purchasing a firearm. Now, so those were federal charges. She's in federal prison, right? Well, actually, she's still in county prison.
Awaiting sentencing?
No, she's already been sentenced. She's
Okay.
just waiting to be assigned to a federal prison for a go
Okay,
test.
gotcha.
But she also pled guilty to a state charge of felony child neglect, and
Right.
that does carry up to a 5-year sentence. But the prosecutors, and I don't know why, but the prosecutors said we're going to stick with the 6-month guideline. No, the kid shot a teacher. Give her the full 5 years.
Well, and here's the thing. That teacher was young. She was starting out her career. Her career's ruined. I mean, her life isn't ruined, but it's never going to be the same. And here we lose another talented teacher. I mean, from all accounts, she was an amazing teacher. Everyone loved her. When I see the things, well, I'm a high school teacher, and I've always been a high school teacher. When I see the things that these elementary teachers do, if you're an elementary teacher and you're watching this, you're amazing. Kudos to you. I see oh my God, the pictures they have to take, like the way they have to decorate their classroom. They have to keep in touch with the parents, like we don't, like high school doesn't. This woman's career is ruined. This is what she wanted to do with her life. This was her dream. Her family were teachers. It's just, as somebody who has enjoyed 30 years of teaching, because I've been lucky enough to have wonderful students for the most part, and pretty decent administrators who held down the fort. It just breaks my heart for this woman, but her career would never have been what my career was, because I started in the 90s, so that's the difference.
Yep, exactly. Okay, so the next case we're going to move on to is one that happened about a year ago down in Florida. We all saw the video. The video was horrifying. This big 17-year-old dude, Brendan Deppa was his name, who accused his teacher of taking his Nintendo Switch away from him in class. So he thought that was a good opportunity to track her down the hallway, tackle her, and beat the crap out of her right in the hallway, right on camera. So this
Very
is just
disturbing. That kid was unconscious, and he just kept beating her down. It took like 3 teachers.
Yeah, the video is horrifying.
I think as a teacher, I don't even know if I would have stepped in. I probably would have screamed my head off and called 911. I don't think you could have fought that kid off.
No, he was a big dude.
And what was he, like 6'4" or something,
he
and
was-
like 270?
Yeah,
he
he
was
was-
pushing 3, and the
yeah,
woman
he
was
was-
like what, 120
Yeah,
and 5'4"?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
that's okay. No, that's exactly right. So, like I said, this happened down in Florida. So this is just another case of a kid disrupting school, making it not safe for the students, beating the crap out of a teacher, making the teachers feel unsafe. This is just going back to how can anything get done in school? How can they learn?
Another thing about this case, this was another student in special education who was on the autism spectrum.
Right.
So, the problem with these sort of things, if you understand special education and the laws and Section 504 of the Americans with Disabilities Act, as a school, you cannot, I need to use a word, typically discipline a student for behaviors that are a manifestation of their disability. So a student who's on the spectrum if he exhibits a behavior like acting out, I know we tend to think of these things, echolalia, which is, saying the same thing over and over again, flapping, spinning. There are things that you would expect from a student on the spectrum. Now, obviously, there's all different kinds of behaviors from a student on the spectrum. But what happens is they don't discipline these students a lot. They basically just try to, control the environment so that they don't have these outbursts. And sadly, now you've got a student who is not neurotypical, who's on the spectrum, who may not even understand what's happening to him, but because of what he did and the fact that he probably was not disciplined all those years, now he's going to a prison, where he's going to be in general population of a prison with mostly neurotypical people, unless they're going to...
He's already been in several fights in prison.
Right, exactly. So they did not send him to a mental health facility, and he's doing the same thing in prison that he did in the schools. So now it's becoming a problem, it's becoming a problem as adults because you cannot discipline students for a manifestation of disability. And sadly, that law was written back in the 70s. And I hate to say it, but at this point, we need to start thinking about, especially with Jennifer Crumbley being held accountable for her son. That's a huge precedent, and parents need to take notice of that. And that parents need to start disciplining their children so they don't wind up in prison. Jennifer Crumbley's facing 60 years in prison, possibly. They're saying that she'll probably get all 4 sentences concurrently as a 15-year sentence, but that's a lot of prison time that you're getting for not disciplining your child.
Right.
Sadly, I think it came down to being a case of being a bad mother. But America is fed up. They've had it. They're tired, and this is what's going to keep happening.
And there is more and more and more coverage of this on the national news. They're doing exposés. They're doing specific programs about school, not only school violence, but violence among juveniles, because it is just so far out of hand. I came across another, and now this one I had never heard of before. This happened back in September, so it's recent. And this kid had done a very similar attack a few years ago. And he was never held accountable for that. So this kid, a 14-year-old boy, now this was down in Florida. Now this 14-year-old boy was 6 foot tall, 300 pounds. He attacked his teacher and stabbed her in the neck. They are going to, he has to go through all sorts of mental health evaluations, but they are considering, and here's another one where they are considering trying him as an adult.
And they will, I'm sure.
And they should.
And also, these states, if you're in a red state, I'm not getting political here because we have vowed not to be political on this channel, but if you're in a red state, and that's your child and your kid's 14, 15, we'll talk about Aiden Fucci later, that they're in prison for life for something they could do as, a 13, 14, 15, it's insane.
Yeah. And then the other one I came up with was, we remember, this was just a sad story out in Vegas, where those 2 teens went on this crime spree. They stole a bunch of cars. They were just running people over. They had ran over a 72-year-old guy on a bicycle. Thankfully, he didn't even go to the hospital. He just had knee pain. But that was a hit and run. But then they were filming all of this, and they ran down a former police chief, just out minding his business, riding his bike, and killed the guy. And they're laughing. They think it's the funniest thing ever. And even you see them in their perp walks, and they don't care. They are taking no responsibility for it. There's no remorse. There's nothing.
That one really bothered me because from all accounts, that man was like the salt of the earth. He was a great guy.
He just retired.
Yeah, and you're just riding your bike, and these kids that were raised not raised right. This guy did everything right in his life and earned his right to retire and enjoy his life.
Yeah.
And here comes 2 punks. I hate to use the term, but it's just, that one got to me. Because here you are just riding your bike.
Well,
And because some people did not raise their children right, because this is what's happening nowadays. Parents are ignoring their kids to be on their phones. Look at the Crumblies, perfect example. They were more concerned with swinging and going and riding the horses, getting drunk, than taking care of their children. And then this is what happens. So four students, and I mean, that affected thousands of people. If you think about all their friends, all their families, have to suffer because you didn't do your job as a parent. It's disgusting.
And did you want to cover Aiden Fucci real quick?
Yeah, you want to talk about Aiden Fucci?
Yeah, you go ahead.
Aiden Fucci he was 14 at the time. He killed Tristan Bailey, who was 12 years old at the time. He lured her out in the middle of the night and stabbed her over 100 times. And his mother, as typically happens with some of these parents, I'm not ragging on parents. I know amazing parents. I work with amazing kids. I work with amazing parents. Mom tried to wash the blood out of his jeans. But guess what? Caught herself on her own home cameras doing that. Yeah, okay. So there's the Darwin Award, Mrs. Fucci. There's your Darwin Award for what you did. So there you go. I mean, and I understand where these parents are coming from. Your instinct as a parent is to protect your child. But guess what? Don't do it when they're 14. Do it when they're little. That's when you can control them. Because your 14-year-old, you can't control if he gets it in his mind. And he just did it for the experience. He saw himself as a badass, and he wanted this experience. Well, guess what? He got it. And he ruined her life, her family's lives, her siblings' lives, and his own life too. And his family's life, because his mother basically, she's gonna be accountable as well. So,
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. So those are the cases that I came up with. However, I did find some other interesting things. This is out of Cincinnati, Ohio. It's Hamilton County, and I read an article, and back in 2020. There were 3 juveniles charged with murder in the Hamilton County Juvenile Courts. Then in 2021, there were 13 juveniles charged with murder. Not just a violent, we're talking murder, and these are juveniles in juvenile court. So we can see where this is just increasing. Every year it's getting worse and worse and worse. I saw another statistic. I didn't want to quote it because I could not find the source. But 2022 had the highest rate of crime for individuals between 12 and 24 since the 90s.
Now, is that among males and females?
Yeah.
Males and females. Okay.
Yeah, everybody. So it's just increasing year after year. And I read an article, and I had referenced him earlier. His name is Joseph Giacalone, and he's an adjunct professor as well as a former commanding officer of the NYPD's Bronx Cold Case Squad. And this was a quote that I took from him. So this is Joseph Giacalone. The schools aren't taking care of things, and the police have to deal with them. And meanwhile, they have no child rearing at home, no discipline at home, and at school, they want to know why, then they want to know why the kids are acting out. Well, they're acting out because they don't know any better. They're not taught. They have no clue how to act in public.
No one's teaching them.
No,
they're not. No one's, And the schools' hands are tied because of this. Because parents do not want their kids disciplined. So that's why restorative justice came about. And restorative justice, in my opinion, is a bunch of bull crap. A kid smacks another kid upside the head, and you give them Skittles and let them hang out with the principal. No, that isn't what you do. There's consequences in the world for doing these things. And like I said, parents don't discipline their kids. Children, a society will. And a 6-year-old. And the problem is they don't even have the laws to deal with some of these things. because there's no precedent for it. But guess what? This stuff keeps happening. There's going to be a precedent, and they're going to throw the book at you and your child.
And I remember talking to you back during the Jennifer Crumbly case, and I was asking you what can be done in terms of laws, and the only thing I could think of, it would have to be done on a federal level, and it would have to hold schools accountable somehow for disciplining these kids. And the only thing I could come up with was somehow tie it to the funding. But then Mary pointed out, well, we don't get a lot of federal funding, so what difference is it going to make? So I just don't know what the answer is at this point. It's way above my pay grade to come up with the answer. That's what I had, and you shot that down right away.
But you're probably right, though. I mean, if laws are passed, state laws and federal laws, that these kids need to be disciplined, then the school doesn't have a choice. And they don't have to pander to the parents. And they can discipline kids as they see fit. And that might, well, sadly, I don't think there's going to be schools in 10 years.
That's the other thing,
Yeah.
because and that's going to be the unfortunate consequence of all this, is that we're not going to have schools, because there's not going to be any teachers to teach these kids. Because why would a teacher want to go into an environment on a daily basis fearing for their life? It's just, it's not sustainable.
And when you think about it, okay, so I have 3 years to go to retirement. A quarter of teachers have 5 years or less until they can retire. So you're going to lose a quarter of us in 5 years. And then the universities aren't pumping out the candidates for the new jobs. Teachers are leaving left and right. And then another thing is, like in Texas, they've been taking their certifications if they leave mid. So now you're even certifying less people.
So basically, so think about that for a second. If you were that teacher that got stabbed in the neck in Florida, all right, so let's say this happened in Texas, and I cannot teach in this school anymore. So she quits, and she's quitting the school, but she wants to go get another teaching job. Well, because she quit the school in the middle of the year,
right,
they take away her teaching certificate, and now she can't teach anywhere else. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of.
You're biting off your nose just by your face, especially in a state like Texas where they're desperate. It's really bad there for teachers,
Well, it's getting to a point where there's not many states where it's good for teachers anymore, right?
No, and this will bring me to my disclaimer. I work at a very small school in New Jersey. We have about 400 kids in the high school. That's about it. And my students, 99% of my students are amazing. They are wonderful. I love them. I love working with them. I hate all the other bullcrap that goes along with teaching, especially the political landscape today. But my students are wonderful, and I'd say 98% of our parents are also great. So those kids are out there, and there are parents doing a great job, and kudos to you. And I feel for you because you're raising your kid right in today's climate, which is not easy to do because it's a dog-eat-dog world now. And there's wonderful kids out there, but sadly, this is what we're hearing about. We're not hearing about the amazing kids in my forensics class who who are going to read to the kids in the elementary school. That's not sadly, that's not what we hear about. But, there's a lot of great kids out there. I just feel bad for the good kids out there and the good parents out there, who are sending their kids to school every day, with the likes of an Ethan Crumbly, who's being raised by those parents. And I don't even blame Ethan Crumbly. He was 15. What the heck did he know? I blame those parents, But sadly, his life is done. He's in prison at 15 years old, prison for the rest of his life.
Yeah. And he has no chance of parole, right?
No chance of parole, no.
Nope, so he's done.
Yeah, and same with Aiden Fucci. He was 14 at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, he only killed one person, but it was a lot more personal and a lot more,
Gruesome. And we could spend the next 3 days going over the reason, diving into more of the reasons. We're going to sort of stay away from that because that gets into all that'll just take us down all sorts of different avenues. that
The
we.
pandemic is definitely a big
The
problem.
pandemic was I think,
Every-
and I think, and
everything
even when you're
changed.
looking at the statistics, you can see that's where the uptick started with the pandemic, and then I think that had a lot to do with it, along with a myriad of other.
Yeah, but the
reasons that we
pandemic
could
was a
get into.
biggie. We
But
took
I
away
think that
these
was the
kids' social
catalyst.
supports. I was shocked during the pandemic by how many students could not learn if they were not at school. That was shocking to me, because I figured I had really good students and we had really good parents, and you know that the parents would be on top of them, and that, you know, they would get, and I was just shocked at how many kids just fell off they just checked out. They checked out of the world, they checked out of life, they fell off the face of the earth, and sadly it was the kids that needed the sense of community that a school could provide, and it was heartbreaking to watch. I was not prepared for what I was going to observe.
But then, as a corporate trainer myself, I noticed this because we do everything virtually, and these people, there's so much going on in those houses, in the backgrounds, they can't concentrate. It's trying to keep, you know, and I'm doing classes of, you know, maybe 20, 30 people. And, you know, all I have is the screen to see them. So we need to, you know, we make it a rule, everybody's got to be on camera so we can see what's going on. But half the time they're not on camera, they blur it out, they have their camera cocked so you can't see them. They got babies in their laps, they got babies crying, kids running around. You know, husbands, wives yelling, screaming. It's just total chaos. So, and these are adults. I can't even imagine a kid trying to learn in that environment. It's impossible.
You have a new appreciation for me teaching at home during the pandemic.
Exactly.
When he'd be heating up his lunch in the microwave when I was on a call with the student, I'd be like, "You really have to do that now?" He gets it now, though. It only
Yep.
took 4 years.
Yeah. So that was our little rant on Gen Z, Gen Alpha crime in today's,
We'll
and
probably rant on them a lot more.
trying to relate it back to the schools a little bit. But
Now the good part.
Now the good part.
And it was so good I drank it all. I'm done.
So this was Montezuma Winery up in the Finger Lakes. If you ever get a chance to go up there, all their wines are good.
Everything's amazing there. They have great fudge. They have great snacks.
I was gonna say their fudge is really good too.
Yeah, the store is huge. One wine's better than the next. They've got dry. They've got fruity stuff. They've got whatever you
everything.
want. Yeah.
And now they have alcohol, not like the distillery.
Yeah, they have a distillery.
So-
And it's way, like, it's all the way.
Oh, it's way at the
you're at the top of the world looking down on creation if you go to Montezuma Winery.
But it's always our first stop when we go up there. We
Love
just
it.
drive all the way up there. That's always our first
and
stop.
start there and we just head on back
Yeah.
down. Yep. So subscribe. If you love us, please share us with your friends, family, neighbors, people who just are in their basement all the time, reading crime stuff like us. And sign up for the notifications if you'd like to watch our new videos, or don't if you don't want to. We're trying to get, and our goal is to get to 500. We're working on we're gonna use 500 as our goal. We're at 360, and we want to get to 500. So if you can get us there, that will be awesome, because we want to go live. We want to have lives with our subscribers. We want to have people call in. We want to interact with you. We want to talk with you. I've really tried to interact with you in the comments. So like I said, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and get us to 500, and then after that, our goal will be 1,000.
Yeah.
We'll be really happy when we're at 1,000.
Yes. All right. Till next time.